When I've sat down here and talk about the warranty and the cons coming from Africa, we know this because we've been exposed to it enough. We go, oh, well, that's a fake. But what if it's the first time? Give you an example. I can remember my wife and I, we had moved to South Carolina, and we get a notice in the mail. You have won a prize. And they offer 3 prizes on there. One was a car. The other, I believe, was, I forget what it was. It was cash, possibly. And then there was a 3rd prize. All we have to do is go down to Myrtle Beach on their dime and listen to a presentation. Well, Joe and I said, hey, it'd be nice to go down and have a little bit of vacation. So we went down there. We listened to a 1-hour talk about a timeshare. We didn't have enough money to get it, so we had no way to be deceived. We had no money. And we was waiting for our prize. I said, well, maybe, I might get some money out of this deal. Okay, this is great. I got a Swedish spa. Do y'all know what a Swedish spa is all about? It's a little bitty small plastic tent that you sit inside, and you sit down here and you put hot water in to be able to create the spa effect. That was what was really being offered. And by the way, the complimentary was only for the day. It was not for anything special, and they didn't even have a meal with it. Have y'all had any of those? Any of y'all run into the timeshare cons? Okay. Yeah. Camping? How do you do it on camping? It's like, well, by the way, if you did not buy into it, you're very fortunate because, of course, you have to pay fees to be able to keep up your timeshare. And getting out of a timeshare is actually quite challenging. And they'll try to bleed you dry. We all are susceptible to it. It sounds so good that we want to do it. How many of you have ever heard all the ways on the internet that will sit down here and things will make you better, okay? I'll give you one. One of the extracts from the marijuana plant, Cannabidiol, CBD is what everybody calls it, is designed to cure all known ailments. It's supposed to be able to cure everything from loss of hair all the way to toe fungus. By the way, I'm a chemist. I'm going to tell you what it's going to solve. Nothing. Okay? A lot of people say, oh, it's helped me with my joints, or help me with this. Well, there might be some anti-arthritic properties in there. Maybe, possibly. But not a lot. But right now it's unregulated. You can buy a little small bottle for $80. And the people who get your money are very appreciative of it because it costs about $3 to make. Because all you have to do is take the marijuana plant, which has very low tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, with very high in the other, and you just squeeze it out. Most of them don't even filter it. You just put it in the bottle and you sell it. And by the way, as of this year, it is legal for anyone in this room to grow the hemp plant, which is a marijuana plant that has very low THC and high cannabidiol in it. So if you want to go into the business, go for it. Be careful though, because nature is a little treacherous. The hemp plant likes to make higher THC than people want it to be at. And if it crosses over a 3% threshold, guess what? You're going to be arrested for manufacturing of marijuana. Okay, just letting you know. So there's a risk with it. But we are susceptible to this. We, for some reason, cannot see all the factors, and we all do it. All of us do it. Which gets us into some really awkward situations. How many of you remember the time a gentleman took 100 of the large balloons he found? They're very large, and he filled them with helium. And he took and tied them off to the bumper of his car. He then tied it to a lawn chair, and he had a pellet rifle, and he sat down in the lawn chair, and then he cut the rope on his bumper, so he was wanting to glide up from the ground. And what was going to happen, he's going to shoot the balloons to be able to regulate his buoyancy so he wouldn't go too high. When he cut the rope, guess what happened? He went straight up. okay? He was in L.A. County, California. As he drifted up, the trade winds had caught him and pushed him over LAX. The jets coming in were dodging him. The military was called. What do we do? Now, by the way, his remedy, which was a pellet gun, he had dropped. Because when they went up, he didn't realize, oh no, he's in a lawn chair, okay? So what he did is he let go of the pellet gun and reached down and grabbed the handles because he got scared. Well, his pellet gun went down. He had no way of regulating the buoyancy. So here he is floating around about 3,000 feet, jets flying around him. The military was called. What do you do? Well, the first suggestion was, well, we could shoot him down, but that was suggested not to do, okay? They'd like to save him. Fortunately, the winds were blowing in the right direction. They pushed him out over the Pacific Ocean. And another thing began to occur. I don't know if y'all know this or not, but helium is an extremely small molecule. If you put it inside latex, rubber balloons, when it's blown up, there's actually little tiny holes in there, and the helium can work its way out. If you ever bought a balloon that hasn't been anodized with aluminum, it will go flat in a short period of time. Because it'll go up and then it'll come back down in a few hours. Well, that's what happened. He began to run out of helium, and he began to come down, landed in the ocean. The Coast Guard picked him up. He thought it was a great idea at the time to do what he did. He was in trouble like he wouldn't believe, because you're not allowed to fly over LAX. That's just, you don't do that. So he had all kind of issues to deal with. My point is this. We do things that we think are smart that are really stupid. In the South, we're known for this. You know, what's the favorite phrase people now use when you're about to do something real stupid? Here, hold my beer. You know, that usually indicates you're about to do something really stupid. My point that I want to drive at this morning. Our stupidity comes about because of our ancestors. When Adam and Eve sat down here and sinned, they destroyed our ability to understand things in a complete way. Our human nature became flawed. And we have been living with our human nature ever since. We see the effects of it in our decisions that are made and what people do. And we laugh at some of them, and some of them we just cry because of the damage it has done. God has actually provided the way out. And what he did was he allowed us not only have our sins covered with blood to be removed, he gave us a heavenly nature. I'm going to call it that. It goes by many different names. Now, each one of us has inside of us two natures. You have a human nature and a heavenly nature. Is that not true? Anyone disagree with me on that? I want to kind of emphasize this because this is very important to understand. When you're in your heavenly nature, who is the boss? When you're in your human nature, who's the boss? Each one of us, yes. How do we do as our boss? What has been your experience? Disaster. I have found every time I try to take over and do it, you know what happens? It messes up like crazy. It is horrible. Now, I would like you first to turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. First Thessalonians chapter 5, and I'm going to kind of show you how God is giving us ways to protect ourselves. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. It says this, test all things. Now, what does it mean to test? Try it. Try to sit down here and see if what is being done is what it really is. Now, I'm going to tell you what my mistake is and where I've had troubles. Testing takes time and effort. Someone calls you on the phone and they're telling you that they have $1 million. All you have to do is to do something to get it. You don't want to test them. You want your money, right? Testing takes time. It also takes time to come up with a way to do the test. Now, if they need money, that's my test, by the way. If they sit down and say, well, you have X amount of money and we want to get it to you. Good, but we're going to need some money to get it to you. No, take it out of that and send me the rest. If they don't send it to me, then I know it was failed. I'm not sending you a penny, period. That's my test. I've experienced this enough times to come up with that test. You know what? I've never got a penny from any of these folks. But they quit calling me. That might be a good thing. Test all things. Hold fast to what is good. When we test, we're actually going to find out something is good or something is bad. We need to hold on to that what is good. Now, the reason I want to emphasize this is something that I have discovered in life. God is right. Now, you say, well, I know that. Have you tested God? We mentioned tithes and offerings. When I first came into the church, I remember Jody and I, we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. We were poor as church mice. We sat down here, we come in this church, and the very first thing they said was tithes and offerings. And immediately I said, oh, you want the money, do you? Okay. Sorry, but I get real suspicious. In the Baptist church where I was from, when they passed the plate, you would just kind of toss something in there if you wanted to. Some people would take money back out, but they would, the money would, that's what you would do. Here they actually put a number on it, a percentage. Huh, really? And of course I had the initial argument, wait a minute, I won't survive if I can't have all my money. I mean, I've already paid bills and stuff. I don't have enough money to do this. Have you ever used that excuse? But I did. I remember the first time I gave. My wife, bless her heart, looked at me with a look. She didn't say a word. She just looked at me. And I knew what she was thinking. You fool. You idiot. Are you crazy? I said, well, honey, we got to trust God. She said, I don't have a problem trusting God. I just don't trust you. So she sat down here and we gave the money. Jody and I have never starved. Matter of fact, her and I have had to go on a weight loss program. We got fat. God gave us so much that we got overweight. That's what happens when I gave to God. Test all things. Hold fast to that what is true. In Proverbs chapter 6, we have another beautiful little nugget. Turn there if you will, please. Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs 6, verse 27. Can a man take fire to his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her shall not be innocent. Can that be more clearer? What does that say? What is it saying to y'all? What is it saying? Okay, quite simple. Don't do it. Why? Because you cannot do it and not get burned. And by the way, walking on hot coals, there's a secret to that. I got to share this. You ever seen people walk on hot coals and they don't get burned? You know how they do that, don't you? Oak. You have to burn oak. Oak coals actually have a delay in them. They're about a second to a second and a half to transfer the heat. They don't transfer heat very well. So you can walk on hot oak coals and get through it. You never see them do it on metal. You never see them do it on anything else but oak. But that's the hidden secret, just throwing it out there. Okay? Here we have this statement that if you do this, this is the problem. But now let me talk about a good Seventh-day Adventist. An Adventist who sat down here and knew this and still sat down here and committed adultery. His name was David, is how it would be pronounced. David is how we say it today. You remember David and Bathsheba? David knew. He was a good Seventh-day Adventist, and he was a Seventh-day Adventist, by the way. Wasn't he? What day did he go to church on? Sabbath. Did he believe in the advent of Jesus? Yes. He preached about it. He was an upstanding member of the church. He was an elder. He was a man that people looked at, and yet he still could not understand. You cannot take a coal up and put it to your chest without burning your clothes. Why in the world would he be that stupid? Because up here, whenever we get into our human nature, we think we can get away with it. Have you ever filled out your income tax and thought, you know, I'd like to keep some of my money, and if I claim my cat or dog, or if I claim my potted plant, because look at all the attention I'm giving it. And I'll be honest with you, my 2 cats eat a lot. And cat food has gotten expensive. And they don't care about cost. They just want to be fed. They want that, by the way, they're picky. I have never seen creatures so picky in my entire life. There's only one type of dry food and one type of wet food they'll eat. You better not try to mix with anything else or bring anything. They won't touch it. They'll turn their nose up at it, walk around, and just kind of, meow, meow. I need to claim them as my children. They're costing a lot. But guess what? That's the same stupidity that David got into. Are you willing to admit that each one of us could fall into that same trap if we're not careful? I'm not trying to pick on anyone. I'm trying to say that we are susceptible to those same problems, those same thought processes, and gets us into the same trouble. Are you willing to admit this morning, and I ought to be the first one to raise my hand, that you've done something really stupid in your life? Okay, I'm raising my hand. Okay, I will tell you right now, I have done stupid. I know what stupid is. Let me explain one stupid. We had a mama cow who had just given birth. I came up and I saw this calf, and the calf was actually in a bad place. It was right next to a little water. I was afraid it was going to fall into the water and be able to drown. And so I said, well, you know what? I can grab that calf, and I can get that calf out of that mud hole, and I can get that calf someplace safe. So mama cow wasn't paying attention. So, do what? Mama cow wasn't paying attention. So I reached down and I grabbed this calf, and he went, eh, eh. That's all he had to do. She went to full mama mode. Now, this was not a small cow. This was a beef cow. She was actually a Brahma. Do y'all know what Brahmas look like? They got the big hump on their back and the big old ears in the front. She went about 2,000 pounds with horns and could move. She could move at speeds that I did not realize a cow could move at until I had grabbed her calf. She cleared a ditch that she was grazing at. She just jumped over it. And I was just getting in stride, carrying that calf. And Mama was gaining on me. Now, fortunately, my little brother was there. So I directed him to act as dodgeball to get this cow not to hit me. Which, of course, he jumped right in there to sit down here and annoy the cow, which that wasn't good. I almost lost him that day. I almost lost me that day. I had to put the calf down, by the way. I couldn't keep carrying the calf. I had to put the calf down right where I was at. And by the way, she didn't stop. She kept coming. She was annoyed. I thought I was dead. I found a tree, though. And I sat down here and I went vertical. And that saved me. I went to the top of that tree, and that cow, she was mad. She would slobber a little bit, just her ears would flop, a little slob would come out. And then she'd look at me, and she'd look at my little brother, who had also went up a tree. And then she'd look at her calf, make sure he was okay. Stupid. Stupid. Only but by the grace of God am I here today, because I have done stupid. In Matthew chapter 5, we have another little phrase. Matthew chapter 5. Verse 37. Actually, I'm going to back up to 34 and I'll get to it. This is Jesus talking. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by earth, for it is the footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your yes be yes, and your no be no. For whatever is more than these is from whom? Who's the evil one? Devil, Satan. Have you ever heard someone say, I swear it's the truth? Can I give you some insight into life? Anytime someone says to you, I swear it's the truth. No, it's not. Because your yeses should be your yes, and your no's your no. If you try to emphasize it beyond that, that means that you're trying to bring the person who's hearing it to the point of believing you, and they don't believe you, then there's no need to go any further. Wouldn't it be nice if we lived by that today? I can remember the days when people struck a deal, and what they would do is they would reach out their hands and they would shake hands on it. And you know what that meant? It was going to happen. That's exactly what was going to happen. Today, try that. Try that. Do you know that you cannot even sell a piece of land off of a word or verbal contract? A land has to have a written contract. You can't even do it verbally anymore. You know why? People lied so much about it. Oh yeah, I'll let you have this, and it wasn't that. We have got to be people who sit down here and let our yeses be yes and our no's be no. If people do not believe you, then that's their problem. If I just say yes, that's what I'm going to do, then that's it. I don't need to keep emphasizing. I don't need to keep trying to get you to believe me. Let my yeses be yes and my no's be no. That is hard. That is very hard. Because we live in a very crooked society where your word means nothing when it should mean everything. Why is it important that your word means something? Each one of us are children of God. That means that what we do reflects upon God. Does God sit down here and write up a contract with us? Or does he say it just, this is what's going to happen? Does God do verbal or does he written contracts? Huh? Okay, it's written in his word, is what he said. But he said it, and then that was then memorialized down on paper. Whatever God says, that's what he means, and he means what he says. And we are, of his children should be the same. But unfortunately, we live in a world where our human nature takes over. Our human nature says, well, I've got to sit down here and, I got to fight and struggle to get what I want. And I will sit down here and I will, if I can cheat someone, I will cheat someone. There's a reason that I do not participate in gambling. And this is going to sound strange because used to in our church, you'd hear people very clearly say gambling is wrong. And I kept saying, well, why? And they could never give me a reason. They couldn't. I'd say, well, what's wrong with gambling? Tell me what's wrong with it. They say don't do it. Who says not do it? The church does. Well, who's the church? That's a bunch of people who just don't want to gamble. What are you talking about? Well, I found the answer. Did you know, as a person who's walking with God, I am responsible for you? My actions, what I do to you, I'm responsible for. It could be actual direct inactions, or cheating you in a deal. For example, if I'm trying to sell you a car, this car has been babied. You don't have to worry about it. It is in great shape. It doesn't use any oil. It is absolutely in wonderful shape. And they drive it down the road, and what happens? It falls apart. We have to interact with people. When I tell people stuff, and I've had this happen, yeah, this is a good vehicle, but let me tell you the problems with it. And I will give you a list of what I know is problems with it. You're not going to buy it from me unless you know exactly what's going on and what's happening with it. I've had people walk away from a deal because of that. Well, I think what you're selling here is just overpriced. No, I don't think so. I think it's priced the way it should be. And they walk away. Our yeses should be yes and our no's should be no. And I am responsible for you. Now, let's look at the concept of gambling. Where does the money come from in gambling that you win? Where does the money come from that you win? What do you mean all the people? Okay, so everybody comes in, they're gambling, they lose their money. Then I come in and I swoop in and I gather it up. Right? Am I responsible for taking away their money? Not directly, you're right. But am I responsible for my brother? Am I my brother's keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? Am I? If I sit down here and I'm taking money away from you indirectly, don't I have to be very careful how I do that? I mean, this goes the same way with loans. Do you know that we are directed, if we give a loan to each other, we're not to put interest on it? Did you know that? Why? I'm not to profit off of you. I am not to sit down here and to take money from you and make profit for me. I'm loaning you money to help you out on something, and the loan suggests you'll pay me back. But I even do something even more strange. Because I've been burned so many times on giving money to people, I don't even ask for that. I just say, if I'm loaning it to you, if I'm willing to loan it, if you want to pay me back, you pay me back. If you don't, you don't. Because I've been burned on that so many times, expecting people to pay me back. What I'm saying is this. Gambling for me puts me in a situation where I am taking advantage of other people's bad decisions. And I would rather have God provide me what I have than me go out here and try to win it by gambling. Now, you may say, well, that's okay, that's good. Gambling for me is really not a problem because I have the mathematics in my head. I can run these mathematics like you wouldn't believe. They call it card counting. But I can sit down here and keep up in my head all the various cards that have been played. I know statistically how to be able to move it to my advantage. And I also know that my God says He provides for me. So that evil, that vice, I will not play with. I don't have any interest in it. Why? I would rather be poor than to be wealthy off of other people's misfortune. Because when I meet my Savior, I don't want Him saying, look at all the people that you cheated. Now, I've got to say, well, God, I didn't force them to gamble. But by me taking it, it was allowed an avenue for them. I'm allowing them to lose their money, me take it. And that's just not right. Do y'all follow what I'm saying? Now, you may think I'm being very restrictive. You may think, well, that's just unheard of. Why do you think our founding fathers was against gambling? Why do you think that gambling is not something that we ask people to do? Gambling is saying you win it on your skills. Not because of God, but your skills. And some people are better skilled at it than others. By the way, does gambling involve lying? If I'm sitting at a card table, I'm playing 21. Or let's say 5-card stud. Y'all probably don't have no clue what 5-card stud is, do you? I watch these things on television. 5-card stud is where you sit down here and you lay 2 cards down, play 3 up, and you can sit down and play combinations off of the up cards. And you try to fake out your opponent. Make him think you got a different hand than you do. So you can raise against him and get money from him. It's perfectly acceptable to lie in gambling. You lie about what you have, what you don't have. And it's all about taking advantage of somebody. If we are people of God, do we have a God that gives us what we need? Why do we need to try to take it away from our fellow beings? Why? Why do we have to sit down here and take advantage of them? Because we can doesn't mean we should. So that's my little side trap on gambling. I want to talk about the one last thing here about this defect and how it affects people. In Revelation chapter 17, please turn there. We have a day coming. It will not be too far along where a huge number of people will think they know what is right when they don't. Revelation 17, 1 and 2. Then one of the 7 angels who had 7 bowls came and talked to me, saying to me, "Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great harlot, who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication." That's code for deceptive doctrines. Babylon. Babylon is going to be listed as, if you will, the apostate church. Now, that's not just apostate Protestant. That's not apostate Catholic. That's not just apostate Muslim. That is the apostate church, the entire group. For in the apostate, there's all kind of misinformation that's been put out there. I'm amongst Adventists, so let me go ahead and hit you with a couple that's out here. Eternal burning hell. Have you ever heard that one? How about right now your relatives are watching above? I hear that one a lot. How about the fact that Jesus is going to come back and reign on this earth, and make all of the wicked people do right? You haven't heard that? That is part of the tribulation. The tribulation concept is Jesus comes back and he takes a rod of iron and you will sit down here and do what he says or he will destroy you. My God never makes anybody do anything by force. And the list goes on. Unfortunately, people of this earth are not testing out these theories. For if they was to look at them just a little bit, they would come up with some interesting questions. For example, only the righteous have eternal life. So how does someone live forever in hell? No matter how you cut it, you still have eternal life. You're still alive. So you're now saying the Bible is a lie. So that should make you go, it fails the test. So I shouldn't hold fast to it. But you know what the world does? It sounds good, and they will hold on to it. Now, where does this lead? If you look at the latter part of 17, starting 15. Then he said to me, "The waters which you saw where the harlot sits are the peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. These are all the people which are supporting Babylon. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire." In this church, I've rarely seen a sermon on Revelation 18. If you notice, that's the next verse, next chapter over. Revelation 18 talks about Babylon. It talks about people scared. And it gives shipmasters and merchants and others. It talks about how they're so scared of the punishment of the fire that is happening with Babylon. Let me pull back the pages just a little bit. What do you think is going to happen with the great multitude who is supporting Babylon, who has adopted all these concepts that are wrong or false, when the 7 last plagues begin to fall upon them? What is going to be their reaction? I'm sorry? Fear? I saw anger. Did someone say anger? All right, think about this for a second. How would you feel if you had been promised, if you do this, this, and this, you'll be in heaven, and all of a sudden you know that, I'm not going to be in heaven? What do you think you're going to do to those institutions that have supported these ideas? Would your anger be turned upon them? Let me give you a picture. Now, you may not be around and listen to news media when this happens because of the troubles and trials, but let me tell you what is going to happen. Can you imagine millions of people swarming in to churches, synagogues, all the various mosques, everything, and tearing them apart piece by piece? And anyone who is a preacher or associated with them, they're tearing apart and killing. They're burning everything down. And it's, by the way, if they sit down and go after the Catholic Church, they're going to have money. Have you ever been in a Catholic church? You should someday. Go in. They are magnificent, magnificent structures. Gold is lined up at the top. The one down in Charleston I've been in. And you would not believe the gold that's inlaid into the walls. The lamps are gold. They have statues, gold and silver. I'm talking about probably tons of gold and silver. What do you think these people are going to do when they're sitting here seeing total oblivion, being destroyed? What do you think they're going to do? They're going to rip this stuff apart piece by piece. They're not going to allow anyone to escape. I mean, it is going to be horrifying. And it says that the world will see this and stand back and go, oh, what do I do? What do I do? For fear of this destruction. Once they get through destroying this, all they have left is try to shoot God out of the sky. They go to make war with the Lamb of God. Do I need to tell you what's going to happen with that? That ain't going to work. I will assure you right now, trying to shoot God out of the sky is not going to work. But that's for another sermon, another day. We need to recognize that we as children of God have a weakness. The moment you depend upon yourself, you will fall. We need to depend upon God. That means that we need to let God make our decisions for us, not us. Do you pray to God when you sit down and take a trip somewhere? You should. You know what you're doing? You're saying, God, I know that in my mind I can make this trip safely, but I don't know everything. So I want you to be the one who takes me on this trip, and I want to trust you. And that way, whatever happens, then I know, okay, this was in your will because I asked you to guide. If there's a wreck, okay, there's some reason this happened. I can deal with that. Versus me driving down the road and getting hit by some drunk. You see the difference? When we pray for God to do things, we're not just doing it as just something to do. We're doing it because it means something. I even ask God to make the right decisions financially for me. Oh yes, I can sit down and read the blueprints. I remember when we bought our piece of land that we had up in upper part of Lexington County. And I remember it was perfect. Jody and I was just, this is what we've been looking for. It's got 10 acres and it's nice, it's wonderful. And I said, God, I'm going to ask you, if you don't want us to have it, I want something to come up that stops it because this is good, I like it. Interestingly enough, the backstory on this was that land was actually under contract to somebody else before we looked for it. They couldn't do it. Our contract did not have a problem. Went through, no problems, no issues, no nothing. Now I could sit down and say, well, that's because Jody and I worked real hard to get it. No, it's because God said, this is what I want you to have. And I know that's what he wants us to have because he showed us. That's what we are to do with God. We're to let God help make all decisions for us. That way we can know they're the right decisions. It's called walking with God. It's called trusting God. And we have to exercise that. For if you don't, when the tough times comes, you may not be willing to reach out to God because you're trying so hard to protect yourself. Your human nature wants to protect itself. I'll lead you to this story to think about it for just a moment. Jesus Christ, on the night that he was betrayed, in the Garden of Gethsemane, do you remember the prayer he was recorded in the Bible? The prayer said, dear God, I don't want to go through this. That's the human side. But not my will, but your will. Even Jesus had to struggle with what we're struggling with. Jesus did not want to go through that. But his Father did. So he gave in to the Father because he recognized the Father's right. We are the children of God. That means that our decisions should not be our decisions, but it should be God's decision. Do you all understand what I'm saying? I think this is very important because we're entering into a period of time where we're going to be tried, every one of us in our faith. We're going to be tried because the world is going crazy. And by walking with God, you can have the peace, no matter how bad it is. No matter what things get knocked out from anything. Let me give you, for me, what could be hurt me real bad. I am now one of those retirees, okay? I have a pension, and I get money from another form of the government. The governments pay me, okay? State government pays me, and federal government pays me. And you know what they can take away from me at their leisure? Do you? They could take all that away. All they have to do is say, nope, you don't get it no more. It could be because the law always says, because you won't conform to what we want, we're going to take it away from you. The government would never do something like that, would they? They would never sit down here and tell you that if you don't sit down and comply with what we want, we're going to penalize you. Folks, I know the government. They love to do that. What is it going to be like for my wife and I if all of a sudden those crutches that we're on right now gets knocked away? I put it in God's hands when I retired. I said, God, are you ready for me to retire? And he said, yes. And I said, I trust you even if it's taken away. I'm not worried about it. Why? Because last time I checked, God can do things that we can't even think about. Now, on my land that he's given me, for whatever reason, I'm hoping I can grow a garden there. I've got so many critters, it's ridiculous. I've got a pack of 5 male turkeys that come out to see me whenever I go on the property. They come out and look at me. I don't know why people have to buy all this stuff to turkey hunt. My turkeys come out to say hello to me. There's 30 girl turkeys that also swarm around the place. I noticed 5 guys and 30 girls. I don't understand that. But anyway, the girls go around in packs. We got a herd, and I do mean a herd of deer that comes through at nighttime. We caught them on the game cam. They just kind of come through and check everything out. And I got one big old fat pig that showed up. I think that's the neighbors. I don't know who it is, but he came by and he wanted some corn. God has given me a place to stay. God has given me life right now and health, but that may not stay because as I'm getting older, unfortunately, things kind of go bad. It doesn't matter. As long as I walk with God, it doesn't matter. I can trust him. And I'm afraid that each one of us will be faced with these same tests. And you need to think about it. You need to sit down and go through your mind. Am I mentally ready to deal with nothing and total trust in God? Ellen describes it this way. You let go of a rope. She describes a picture of people going down a trail. And the trail begins to not narrow up. They have to let go of the wagons and stuff because in her time that was what the mode of transportation was. And as they go up, it keeps getting more and more, and all the stuff they're carrying they have to let go. And the final act is there's a rope that's coming down from heaven, and not even pictured who's holding it. And they have to sit down here and hold on to the rope. And they have to trust God. Folks, that's what it is. We have to trust God. And so I'm challenging you. Understand we have a defect. We cannot see what is best for us, even though we may think we know what is best for us. But I know my God. He knows what's best. And while I may not know, I know he does. So I put my trust in him. Please listen to the song that will be playing on the internet.